Hey everyone, welcome back to the Gray Matter Health podcast, where we talk nutrition, training, recovery, and the mindset you need to sustain it all. For those of you who don't know, I came into health coaching with a background in corporate America. I worked for a variety of tech startups for about 9 years before I decided to transition my career into nutrition and fitness. But because I came into this world with the connections and the network I have, a lot of the people I've happened to work with over the years all have pretty much the same background and have come to me with the same concerns. The pattern goes something like this. Imagine a corporate office worker who's under a lot of stress to perform. They also have a very ambitious, high achieving personality where they do want to compete and they do want to be the best at everything they do. This person's working upwards of 60 hours a week. Life pretty much revolves around their career. And over the past year or so, they may have incidentally put on a few pounds, a few too many for their standards. So they're coming to me really fired up, really ready to get back to their old body where they felt fit and capable and looked the way they wanted to. And they're ready to do this by undergoing a hardcore diet and fitness protocol. They're already ready to restrict their food, sign up for boot camps, do whatever it takes to work the calories off. And this mindset is understandable, but over the years, I've realized that it is definitely not the way to go. And instead, I apply a more gentle approach to both nutrition and training with people who've been overworked and overstressed for years and years. And I found that that's been way more effective than what they come in wanting to do, which is to apply some extreme amount of willpower to kick their asses back into shape. And today I'm going to explain why. And I'll start by saying this. There is one singular habit that most people not necessarily ignore, but do not prioritize and do not work on, that is the end all be all. They just may not realize it. This one habit is simple in principle, but hard to execute. And it basically determines how much success someone is going to have in both their training and their diet. But it's neglected by almost everyone. And almost everyone I've seen try to adopt this habit has failed. They have failed to pick it up consistently on a day-to-day basis. It is the hardest thing I have to work on with people, but every time they are able to at least get over that hump, even temporarily, it pays off. It pays off so much more than they would have expected. And what is that habit, you might ask? It is putting your phone away before bed. An advanced mode being over an hour before bedtime. That is so hard to do in our modern society. I know that we are basically tied to our phones for everything, and that dependency is very hard to break. In today's episode, I want to go over why I believe that putting your phone away and not using it before bed is a cornerstone habit that fuels everything else. But let's back up first. In 2026, each of us understands the importance of sleep because it is now a part of wellness media to promote good sleep, to extol the various benefits of a good night's sleep. And we as a culture and a society have at least started to come around to valuing it. But for all my fellow millennials out there, we did not grow up in this culture. When we were in college and starting our first jobs and really launching ourselves as adults, we did that under the mantra of, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Sleep is for the weak. It was honorable and respected for people to deny themselves sleep in order to be more productive and have more hours in their day to get work done. And I say this as someone who worked in the startup tech industry, where this was extremely, extremely emphasized. It would be normal, even in a corporate setting, for a company to put on a hackathon where employees were split into groups, into teams, and asked to spend 24 hours basically without sleeping working on a new innovative product, working on creating a new idea or concept from scratch. And these were really exciting, really energy fueled, very fun. So it was completely normalized to be sleep deprived, not only for these special events, but even day to day. The culture was that people would get in relatively early in the morning, and a lot of them wouldn't leave the office until after dinner. Companies would provide 3 meals a day to encourage this, but the schedule would be something like breakfast served at 8 a.m., lunch at noon, and dinner at 6:30 at night. So if you're staying for all those meals, it almost adds up to a 12-hour day consistently in the office. But because other people would take advantage of this perk and stay in the office for those 12 hours, it created a lot of peer pressure for everyone to do so. You don't want to be the last one to show up and the first one to leave. You just don't want to look like a slacker, especially if you are a motivated person who is hired into a company because of your skills, ability, and work ethic. You feel like you have that responsibility to your team to prove what you can do and to push yourself to the limits because everyone around you is. That's the type of culture I'm talking about that a lot of us grew up in. So I am not at all surprised that now a lot of us are struggling to pull back from that culture, even though times have changed, even though the climate has shifted and now there is more of a value on work life balance. It is very, very hard to undo those ingrained habits. And I'm going to level with you here. Even though I will talk about the importance of sleep, personally, I have not been a great sleeper my entire life. It started in high school when I chose to go to a high school in another district that had more challenging academics. I chose to take on a commute that was between an hour and an hour and a half one way every single weekday to go to the school. And in addition to that, took on after school extracurriculars like speech and debate team and lacrosse. As a result, I was exhausted constantly as a high schooler. I would very regularly get home around 6 or 7 p.m. after waking up at 6 a.m. and still have a lot of homework to get done. And because I was so exhausted from the long day, I would procrastinate to get started on my homework. So I would wait until late at night when I was even more fatigued, just slog through it slowly, get it all done by 2 a.m., and then have to wake up 4 hours later to start the next day. And this was my normal from the time I was 14, maybe through when I graduated college, because those habits from high school also carried into my college habits because I ended up going to a very prestigious Ivy League university where it was also encouraged to work super hard and there's no cap on the number of responsibilities you could pick up over the years. The turning point for me was when I was a neuroscience major in college. I took a class where we were asked to read a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky. It's an old book, but it's a classic, and it basically explains the physiology of stress, and particularly of modern stress and how that is causing so many chronic health issues in our current world. The premise is basically this. If you imagine a zebra in the savannah who's being hunted down by a lion, they deal with that stressor pretty infrequently, and it lasts for only a short amount of time. They either get eaten by the lion or they're able to run away. And the idea is, even though we as humans have a very different history of development, Our systems are basically designed to handle stress in small spurts that come up not very frequently. But since we all live in an industrialized world where we all have to work desk jobs, that stress has been transformed to a lower grade but constant barrage of stressors. Our bodies aren't meant to consistently be under pressure of meeting work deadlines, of staying seated long days, of dealing with relationship conflicts, everything that sort of comes up in the scheme of day to day life. And our bodies, in response, have reacted. We have little stressors. They are more mental and cognitive and emotional in nature than physical stressors from the past, but we're still not equipped to deal with them. Basically, the only tool, I won't say the only, but the primary tool we have to deal with these modern day stressors is sleep. And the same conditions that apply the stressors to our lives are also conditions that interfere with our quantity and quality of sleep. Now, everyone talks about chronic diseases such as diabetes and cardiovascular disease being the biggest killers and threats to health in America. But something that is overlooked that contributes to all of those, by the way, is just how common it is for Americans to be sleep deprived. 1 in 3 Americans do not get enough sleep. And it's not just one night of bad sleep. It's not enough sleep night after night after night for decades in their lives. And it's because we're in this system where we have to live these busy lives that don't encourage us to fully rest and recover. But it's also because we are not taught the gravity of sleep deprivation and what it truly means, how severe the effects and consequences can be of not getting enough sleep. If you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep on average per night, you are raising your mortality risk or your risk of dying by 13%. And this is just in the overall population. Even if we look at populations that are encouraged to optimize their sleep, like elite athletes, they are still not getting enough. In fact, among elite athletes, only 3% get enough sleep. They are estimated to need an average of 8.3 hours of sleep a night, but only get about 6.7. The best in the game know that they need to prioritize their sleep. LeBron James, the basketball player, is notorious for getting between 8 to 10 hours of sleep every single night and being religious about it. And on top of that, he stacks on naps midday. So he may be getting a total of even up to 12 hours of sleep a day. And you can see how that has contributed to his performance over the years. In another study in basketball, interestingly enough, it was found that the players who stayed up late at night to tweet on their phones were missing about 2% more of their shots than the players who didn't. It was just an indicator of their normal behavior without any intervention in terms of staying up late at night on their phones. So, all that just goes to say that sleep is an important competitive advantage that is often overlooked, not just for players in the NBA, but even for regular people like me and you. And in order to truly understand the importance and function of sleep, we first have to understand stress. What is stress? Stress is any threat in our environment, perceived or real, that affects our daily function. So, when we think about stress, we often think about mental stress. We're worried about something that's going to happen or something that we're going to do. That is one category. But physically, we stress ourselves out too. Going back to the example of a new client who comes to me who is already very high in mental stress, who then wants to restrict their food and go through high intensity exercise, that would just be applying more physical stress to their system in that sense. Doing things like exercise that you are not going to be able to recover from, as well as not fueling your body sufficiently for everything it needs to do during the day, those are creating stress in the same way as a work deadline or a tough problem you have to solve or an argument with your spouse. All of those fill the same stress bucket. Our bodies do not differentiate from different sources of stress, they all just add up. So, this kind of explains why it's a bad idea to go straight into a boot camp strict diet program if you're already not being able to cope with other types of stressors in your life. Your bucket is overflowing and you are just adding more and more and more. So, eventually, it is just going to completely collapse and break. And what does it feel like when we are chronically stressed? I mean, stressed for long periods of time. Well, in the first few weeks of this, or maybe even up to a month for some of us, it doesn't feel that bad. It feels manageable. You feel tired but wired. You feel like you can do everything that you need to do and get through your day and still feel fine as long as you're maybe taking some caffeine or you're taking more breaks than normal. When we get into multiple months to a year time frame where this stress still doesn't subside, we start to see more serious problems. All of a sudden, you're seeing consistent sleep problems. It's harder to fall asleep, harder to stay asleep. It's harder to wake up in the morning and you never feel refreshed and energized anymore. It's easier for your body to get sick. Your immune function is declining. So, whenever there is a virus out there, it's going to latch on and cause you to catch a cold that is very hard for you to recover from. In addition to that, you are going to experience some GI issues, whether that be constipation, diarrhea, indigestion. All of those things happen in a mode of stress because your body is not focused on digesting that food. In addition, you might start to see your appetite signals going haywire. All of a sudden, you are facing these cravings for sugary or carby foods, sometimes late at night, sometimes uncontrollably, so that you have to eat a lot and you still don't feel satisfied. It's your body going haywire because it has been in constant stress. And last but not least, your mood is going to be more down than it is up. If you are feeling more irritable, more depressed, angry, those are all signs that your body is under a lot of pressure to deal with the stress that you're under. And then lastly, if you still don't address this after months to a year, and we're looking at the time span of high stress and low recovery for multiple years at a time, the only result is burnout. Burnout is the complete incapacity to get up and recover and continue living normally. Your system can't keep up. You have brain fog all the time. You are exhausted. You can't get out of bed. You have zero motivation to do anything. Those are just some of the signs of burnout. And I understand that the reality is a lot more complicated than that. Stress isn't an on or off switch, it is a dimmer switch. It is a spectrum of how many stressors you have and then how many resources you have to combat those stressors. And how stressed out your body is on a spectrum. I would think of the ends of the spectrum as your body being in a state of panic and scarcity versus a state of abundance. On one end, the scarcity end, you basically just don't have enough resources to keep up with the stress that is put upon you. As a result, your body goes into survival mode. And survival mode consists of shutting down every single system that it doesn't perceive as necessary because it just does not have enough to keep all of those systems running. The most obvious one that comes first a lot for women is the reproductive system. You lose your period, you lose your fertility, because if you're not managing your own body, you're definitely not going to be able to support a baby. In addition to that, your mental facilities kind of get blunted too, because your brain is essential for survival, but not everything is essential, right? It doesn't perceive all this cognition and advanced reasoning and the types of things we have to apply to solve problems as absolutely essential. It just makes your brain work on minimum power so that it is basically able to keep your heart beating and keep you breathing and keep you alive. So that causes this brain fog, this difficulty to focus, this irritability, and the mood changes because those things are no longer getting the energy they need to be regulated. In addition, what we talked about before is digestion gets shut down. Because, yes, you do need to digest food to get energy, but if you're honestly always in this alert, panic, scarcity mode, then your body is more focused on running away or responding to threat than it is fueling and regenerating itself. It's getting you ready to basically be that zebra in the plains who is getting ready to either fight or run for its life. With that said, though, it doesn't mean that you will be building muscle. If you care about your physical fitness and your body composition, well, this state of scarcity, I'm sorry to say, is really bad for that as well, because the different balance and hormones that respond to stress is actually going to promote your muscle being broken down and your fat being stored. That is counterintuitive because we are in a scarcity situation. We do want power to run away, but the reality is that muscle is the most expensive tissue for our body to maintain. So when we're no longer having that security and that safety of being able to maintain our muscle, it's going to be the first tissue to go, and all that excess energy is just going to be stored as fat. In contrast to that, the abundance state is when your body is successfully recovering and managing the stress that is put on it. It feels good. It feels like it can take on what's being thrown at it. And in this state, you have revitalized energy. You feel like you are recovered. You feel ready to start the day. You are thinking clearly. You are not tired. And your body is in a state where it is ready to build and it is ready to execute. This is going to be the optimal condition for you to digest and absorb any nutrients you need, for all of your systems to be healthy, for your brain to have exactly what it needs and be able to operate on maximum power, as well as your body's ability to build muscle for the future. It knows that it has a lot to work with. It is in a calm state. There are few threats it sees that it has to deal with right away. So it's able to make that investment in building muscle and making you stronger for what happens in the future. So I talked about your body having resources to cope with stress. Well, what are those resources? We can think of what goes into that process of countering stress as recovery. And there are potentially different modes of recovery. Like you think of things like doing some yoga, doing some meditation, red light therapy, all these things that are being thrown out at you. But there's one thing that is absolutely critical for recovery and for combating stress that nothing will ever replace, and that is sleep. Sleep is critical to this process and it controls how much stress we can handle. And that is because it is only when you are asleep that your body is able to fix and restore your brain cells, as well as recover hormonal balance and recover a balance in a way that is beneficial to us. Now, the first area of that, the brain cells, that's because our brains are hard at work during the course of the day, doing all sorts of things, higher order thinking, as well as coordinating our movement and other vital processes that they need time to recover. There is kind of an accumulation of toxins in the brain during this process because it has been working so hard. And there's also maybe like a scattering of like the organization of your neurons. Like they've processed a lot of information. They're not exactly going to end up perfectly structured and organized with that information. So, what happens during sleep and what happens during dreaming specifically, and deep sleep as well, is that all these toxins get flushed from your brain, flushed from your neural system, and then your neurons kind of reorganize themselves more efficiently. So you might have had this experience. I don't know how common it is, but when I was in college, I would have these really tough problem sets to work through, especially for computer science classes, where we would get a really tough problem and I would just sit and stare at it for hours and hours, and I could not make any progress. It was just completely bamboozling, confusing to me. But often I would just go to sleep, kind of thinking about this problem in the back of my head, and I would wake up, and the next morning, the first thought that came to my head was, oh, I know the solution. Your brain is actually active. It's very active when you're sleeping. It's continuing to slowly work through things that you were kind of thinking about when you were awake. And it's able to build those pathways in a way that it's more productive or more efficient to think about those problems. So, yes, people who sleep a lot will be smarter, will be better able to use those mental faculties. And the other side of it that I mentioned is hormones. So, if you have heard of a hormone called growth hormone, this is going to be responsible for all of those muscular and fat dynamics that I explained earlier. Your body needs growth hormone to produce muscle. And it's not just about, okay, getting big and bulky and strong. It's that if you are an active person, your muscle gets broken down and it gets damaged during the day. So if you don't build muscle, you're not restoring what you lost. A lot of this is just maintenance. And we know that we like that lean tissue because it helps so much with our functional strength and our metabolism. So, what happens when you sleep is that growth hormone goes through your body and it helps restore and fix that muscle that was torn and damaged through any type of activity you did during the day. So, if you're serious about exercise, you are leaving a lot on the table. I would say you're leaving pretty much all your gains on the table if you are not getting enough sleep, because it's during sleep that muscle is built. It's not in the gym. The gym tears down muscle, and sleep restores and rebuilds it better. And another hormone, and a few other hormones that get re regulated during sleep are the hormones that control our appetite. I'm talking leptin and ghrelin. These are the hormones that determine whether you feel full or you still feel hungry. So often you'll notice that during stressful times in your life, you can either lose your appetite completely or you can be really snacky through the day and you can be reaching for things that are more processed, less good for you because your body is craving that quick hit of energy. So if you are getting random cravings for sugar, for carbs at random times during the day, it's a sign that these hunger and satiety hormones are also out of whack. And sleep is the key tool to restore that balance there. All in all, this just reminds me of an interesting observation I've made about our fitness culture. So, exercise is very, very heavily promoted, and you'll see a lot of fitness influencers, gym owners push different types of activity and push more exercise in order to build a certain physique or even just maintain health. And I'm not going to shit on exercise. Exercise is fundamental to that. I completely agree with them. But anyone who has studied or worked with nutrition will know that basically exercise isn't going to be as effective if you're not eating right while doing it. You need to be giving your body the right amount of fuel. Specifically, in the case of weight loss or people who want to lose fat and gain muscle, which is the majority of the population, people often don't realize that over 90% of that is determined by nutrition and not by the routine you're doing in the gym. Exercise is important, but it's not as important as food. And then another layer to that is sleep. And sleep is talked about more so now, but it is still rarely broached by trainers in the gym or even by dietitians and nutritionists. But it's wild because sleep is the key to both of those things. So theoretically, yeah, you are going to be able to make good changes to your body if you are able to follow a specific nutrition plan that enables those changes. But the effectiveness of it is going to be limited by your ability to follow it. And that is going to be limited by not having enough sleep. Because as you know, it's going to mess up your appetite. It's going to take even more willpower to stick to a specific plan. And then if you are denying your body calories that it needs at the same time that you are really stressed and you're not recovering from both of those, well, it's just eventually it's just going to stop working and you are probably going to take a step back. And in addition to that, the effects of sleep on exercise. If you do not sleep enough, then you are not growing that muscle, as we said, and you are putting in this effort at the gym, but that effort might not come with that degree of benefits that it should come with because you're not supporting it with recovery. So, in conclusion, yeah, like exercise is very important. Nutrition is very important, but the prerequisite to both of those is sleep and stress management. And that is the bottom line. So, with that said, how do we get better sleep? Let's circle back to the initial thing I said. What is the one habit that people are not doing that they really need to start doing? And it's putting your phone away before bed. This is going to be monumentally hard for most of you. And even myself, I personally do struggle with this sometimes. When I get into the habit of taking my phone into my bedroom again, it's hard for me to undo that. But it is well worth repeatedly trying to build that habit again and again. The reason why I'm going to pick the phone as the main culprit here instead of other sleep hygiene practices like having a completely dark room, staying cool, having the right type of bed, a quiet environment, all of that is important. But I think in my experience and in the experience of my clients, the phone is going to be the biggest disruptor to sleep. There's a couple reasons why I say this. The first is the most well known. Your phone emits a blue light that kind of tricks your brain into thinking that it's still daytime. So it disrupts that transition into nighttime that prepares your body for sleep. The second is when you get on your phone, it's maybe with the intention of just checking one last email, cleaning something up, like, oh, I'll just look for a minute, but you'll always get distracted by another app, another notification. And then before you know it, it is an endless marathon of scrolling that has kept you up for an hour too long. We might think that we are disciplined people, and we might have put a lot of effort into building our discipline. But when it comes to mobile phones, you have to remember that you as an individual person are up against billions of dollars of corporate research that is meant to keep you hooked, get you addicted, and spend more time looking at your screen. So, as one mere mortal human being, you are probably going to lose that battle. If you take it out, if you don't put it away at a certain time, it's really no saying how long you'll be on your phone. And that length of time, it's giving you more blue light, yes, but it is also making your sleep time inconsistent. And with sleep, one of the things we have to remember is our bodies really like being in a routine and a rhythm for sleep. So the more consistent you are in going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, it almost doesn't matter how many hours are between those, ideally over 6 hours. But as long as you are sleeping and waking at the same time, that is a core determinant of the quality of sleep you're getting because you are enhancing and enforcing this cycle, this circadian rhythm that your body really, really wants to have. So, yes, the phone, huge detractor from sleep. Sleep, hugely important. So, the primary habit, and I think this is hard mode, unfortunately, for a lot of us, is to put your phone away before bed. People will make excuses. I need my phone as an alarm to wake up in the morning. Well, getting a $10 physical alarm clock on Amazon is going to pay itself off within the first 2 nights, I promise you. What if someone calls me? Maybe put your phone in a room adjacent to your bedroom and turn the volume up on important calls just so you can get those emergencies if they will arise and if that's something you are expecting. But ideally, putting your phone in a room that you are not sleeping in about an hour before bedtime is going to be the secret here. And I know that's a hard ask, but just how difficult it is to do that task confirms how wildly addicted to these devices we are, that we really can't go like one last minute or 1 hour without seeing our phones before we go to bed. So just some food for thought there. Now, one last thing before I go, I really want to contextualize this goal of putting your phone away and having a bedtime routine. Obviously, side note, you will have to find something to do in that hour before bed. It could just be chilling, listening to music. That's not on your phone. It could be reading a book, doing some stretching, taking a bath, anything that doesn't require being on your phone. But a lot of people will kind of take this information, get really gung ho about, okay, I now need to like regiment my bedtime and choose a routine that's going to help me get better sleep. And that can very easily snowball into a thought process of, okay, this is one more thing that I have to do in the same category as I need to perform at work. I need to go to the gym. I need to meal prep. I need to do well in these hobbies that I have. It could very easily become one more thing in your to-do list that is constraining or structuring your day in a way that could be stressful. It may be that scrolling on your phone at night used to be the only unstructured part of your day where you could just kind of relax and like let your brain go. And taking that away and replacing it with something like, oh, I need to be more productive and I need to optimize my sleep. So I'm instead going to read this book that I think will help me in some way that I think I should be doing. Getting yourself into the pattern of doing a bedtime routine that you feel like you should do rather than what you want to do is following this same destructive pattern that got us to this point in the first place, where we are low on recovery and high on stress. You do not want your bedtime routine to be just another stressor. Yes, I'm telling you something that is very hard. I'm telling you that it will behoove you to put your phone away and not use that. But I would also encourage you to replace it with something that is genuinely fun and entertaining and just pleasant for you, not another thing on your to-do list. Instead of reading a self-improvement book, choose some sort of easy read that is like a guilty pleasure read. Instead of doing like physical therapy or stretching exercises that are going to make you lift more weight in the gym the next day, just do what feels good. Maybe just like lay on your back for a while, move your body in a way that it feels like moving in that moment. Like try to give yourself a little more free flowing time to do something that's enjoyable, that's just for you, that isn't a means to an end of being more productive, more worthy, more valid. Like you do not need everything you do in the day to serve a purpose that is like wider than just taking care of yourself. You need some time to just take care of yourself. And hopefully that makes sense. I know that I have struggled with this in the past. I'm the type of person who likes to take advantage of every hour of every day because that is what has given me external success and validation in the past. But the more you fall into that mindset and the more you reinforce it, the deeper the hole you are digging for yourself long term. You deserve rest. You deserve joy. You deserve pleasure. You deserve unstructured, flexible time to do whatever you please. So if you are able to, put down your phone in the last hour of the day and take that hour to do nothing productive, everything just for you. Hope that helps. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.